Welcome to the Atheist of Florida YouTube channel. We are pleased to offer some of the most significant speakers and profound issues of our times. If you like today's video, please hit the like button. If you have already subscribed, thank you. If not, you know what to do.
Well, hello everybody. So as I said, my name is Miklas and it's Lund Morwitsen. I don't expect any one of you to be able to say that, so that's absolutely okay. I'll also just share my screen because it's just easier with a PowerPoint presentation in this case. So I had to put that up to just remember what I'm going to do today. Never good to forget it, right? So today we're going to cover a little bit about street epistemology. We're going to talk about what street epistemology actually is. I don't know exactly what level of knowledge you guys have with this. So we will start at the basics. We are going to cover why should you actually do street epistemology? What's the benefits of this, especially today? And how are you going to do it? A few pointers, a few tips and tricks. One thing is to watch YouTube videos. Some people can learn from that. Other people have to get instructions. We are all different in how we learn. This will be the instruction side of it. And then we're going to actually practice what we have learned just a little bit. And at the end, I will have a Q&A. This is not to say that you can't ask questions as we go. I would love you to do that. And I do hope that someone will point out to me if there is raised hands. I will try to look myself, but it's not always easy to do both things.
I will interrupt you and let you know, so don't worry about that part.
Thank you. Thank you. And there'll also be a few links that's to the main website as well as Discord server and to the four street epistemologists that has influenced me the most. I'll also include links to their YouTube sites and urge you to go watch them. So the first question is, who am I and why am I here? So as said, my name is Miklas. I'm 33 years old and I have 3 kids and a loving wife. My kids are 2, 4, and 12 years old. So they're a handful, but I love them. I also have a cat and 2 cats and a dog and a snake. And as I said, way more rabbits than I would like to admit. It started with, we had 3 rabbits and then my wife adopted one that had been mistreated. And then she adopted 3 female rabbits more. No, that wasn't 3 female rabbits, there was 2 female rabbits and a male rabbit. So maybe I should have been a bit more skeptic about that, but we all learn from our mistakes, right? So why am I here? Well, as many of you, or at least as many Americans, I started out religious. My family was Christian, not overly religious or anything. When it came time to my confirmation, I lost confidence by actually reading the Bible. Before that, I always heard specific passages and more kids-friendly versions. For instance, Noah's Ark was talking about how people were so bad, even kids were showing tongues at the animals, going like, at the animals. That was the evil people, right? So when I got to read the real Bible, things changed a bit. But as many people, I didn't lose faith in religion, I just lost faith in the Christian God. And I went through the motions, as many people have, without the basic critical skills. Then I ended up in neo-paganism. And while I enjoyed the company and all that, I would have been without it if I could have chosen. Later in life, I started with activism and I started to be in skeptic groups. And through that, I learned about street epistemology and learned about, for instance, Anthony McNabosco, as many of you might have seen. And a few months back, I was in a workshop they made, and it really caught me. I saw big potential in this, and I have the philosophy, the best way to learn a thing is to try to teach it. Because when you try to teach it, you have to understand it deeper. So that's also why I'm here. So the main question is, what is street epistemology? Well, basically, it all started way, way back, or at least a bit before my time, I know, with this guy who ran around and asked a lot of questions of people. Actually, this guy, he was so good at asking these questions that legend have it that he was executed for corrupting the youth. And I'm, of course, talking about Socrates and his Socratic method and questioning. He was not known for asking questions to be right. He was known for asking questions to have people examining if they're actually right in their opinions. Time went by, and a guy named Peter Boghossian decided to write a book called A Manual for Creating Atheists that I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about. And of course, the title itself comes with some baggage. We can always debate if the content is good, but the title will talk to specific people all by itself. Later, he created, in my opinion, a much better book called How to Have Impossible Conversations. But at this point, he already had some baggage with him from the former book and some other things that's really irrelevant, but people take them in anyways. But this book was read by this guy here called Anthony Magnabosco. I hope you don't have too many windows in over him. I can see here. And Anthony Magnabosco started his YouTube channel, also called Anthony Magnabosco. And he, along with the books, inspired other people, such as Cardinal Curiosity, Juggling Lesson, and Abstract Activist. These are but four of many, many street epistemologists out there today. But these four are the ones that has influenced me the most, each for their reason. Anthony has influenced me for his ability to talk to and with everyone. To be honest, I have seen him strike up so many conversations with so many people, and his patience and his demeanor is admirable. So if you want to see how to strike up conversations and how to keep your posture, and well, go watch him. Cordial Curiosity, also called Reed, that's his YouTube name, Cordial Curiosity. I'm really impressed with his ability to always find a way to ask the right questions. I haven't seen any video where it takes long for him to make people think, which is really what we want in street epistemology. And then we have a Juggling Lesson, or Dali Sadhara, who was supposed to be here today. Him, if you want to see people grasp complex topics at a level that I don't know anyone who can follow that on so many different topics, that's what I admire about him. He can talk about advanced mathematics and advanced spiritual stuff, religious stuff, and he seems to be able to follow every single conversation way better than I could ever hope. And lastly, we have an abstract activist, or Nathan, who has found different ways to use street epistemology. For instance, he had made a survey where he is using this survey so he can do street epistemologies with great groups, many people at once. So if you want to see alternative ways to do street epistemology, I would urge you to go watch some of his. I will put links to their channels at the end of all this. And what is the street epistemology they are doing? Well, it's a tool, it's a way to have conversation about difficult topics with anyone. Now, you guys are atheists, or I'm guessing you guys are atheists. So some of the conversations you are probably most interested in is those that you will have with religious people. And this is a tool that will allow you to avoid many of the things that we see today. When we are talking politics, things tend to go upheated because people are so polarized today. Or if we are talking religion, or the lack thereof, it can be extremely polarized. And one of the problems is that people tend to speak each their language. They are talking past each other. And this sometimes leads to shouting matches if we have debates. Often you will see people are not actually talking to each other at all. They're not reaching agreement. They are just shouting and seeing who can get things to stick on the wall. And in some cases, it can actually lead to alterations between peoples or group. And we would like to avoid that, of course. We would like to get things back down to earth, to build bridges, to get understanding. And this is where we think street epistemology can help. Street epistemology will greatly enhance your ability to listen. It will enhance people's ability to question themselves and their own positions. And this is also for you guys, you might also question your own position. Now, I'm an atheist just as you, but I will be honest, I question my own position as often as I can. And whenever I go into a SE conversation with a religious person, I go in with the idea that they could be right and I could be wrong. It also allows them to reflect on their position. And that's a very important tool in street epistemology, is to give people the time to reflect and allow you to learn about their position, why they hold this position. And this will make even conversations with other religious people easier, and it will make your understanding easier. Even if you want to debate later, you will now know more about how people think and why they think as they do. So you can also use it for other things than street epistemology. But to me, one of the most important things is it built bridges. One thing we always like to do in street epistemology is to see if we can build what's called a golden bridge in the conversation. That is, we will allow people to change their position, to come to us, allow them to be wrong and not be, what do we call it, pointing their errors out. Allow them what's called gracious defeat if they reach that point. And many times you won't see that being reached in your conversation, but it can come over time. If you watch Anthony Magnabosco and some of the others, you will hear these stories of people who came back a year later, 2 years later. And it was just like, what you said, it rang a bell with me, but I didn't notice before months later. And, that's where the golden bridges comes in. So, okay, the thing we are really here for is how to do all this, right? So there's a bit of a disclaimer here that I have to put up. So big warning sign. What we're going to do here is the basics. So the list that I'm going to use here, I would urge you to copy it and use it later. And then when you have done it over again and again, start to find your own flow. You can't expect all conversations to go in this order. This is a standard method, but you can absolutely deviate from it. So one of the very first things we would like to do when we're holding an SE conversation is we would like to establish rapport, because this rapport is what will allow us to later ask difficult questions. There were many different ways to do this. One of the things is to actually be in a place where people would like to have conversations. So don't just stop them random within the supermarket when they're trying to figure out what baby food to buy and what the diapers to buy, because they're probably in a semi-stressed situation if they stand there with 3 children screaming at them and all that. Another thing is how you talk to them, what you're talking about. Now, I did one thing that's a big no in SE when I started this. I told about myself. Now, I did this because this is not SE, this is a lesson in SE. But if you're going out to strike up a conversation with people, don't just blab about yourself. It's not that you're not allowed to tell them who you are. If people ask me, are you atheist? I'll gladly answer, no problem. But that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is them, their position, why they are here. So ask them how the day is, if it was a nice walk, if they're out walking or something like that. And relate to their story, but don't say, oh, I do that too, and no, it's awesome, I like that. That can basically be it. Give them the attention. Most people like the attention when given in that way. The second thing is that you will invite them to the interview and you make sure that you have consent. Now, the reason for this is when you do SE, you don't want to break into people's personal space too much, at least not from the start. So one thing you could do is you can tell them, like, for instance, Anthony Du, I have this hobby called street epistemology. What I do is I strike up conversations with strangers and try to find a belief they hold or a claim they have, and try to figure out why they hold that belief and that claim. What are their reasons, and are they good reasons? I would like to do an interview with you about one of your beliefs or claims. Is that okay? That's one option of how to do it. Then they will know, what is this about? They won't feel attacked from behind, because that's one of the things street epistemology have been accused of, is that it's kind of a sneak attack. That's unethical to do this because people don't know what they are getting into. But I think most street epistemology I have seen are actually explaining this to people. And there are some people who says, no, they don't want to be challenged. Well, okay, then talk with another person. And again, it doesn't have to be religion. I know you're an atheist group, you would like to talk about religion, but if you talk with someone about their belief that one type of ice cream is just a superior type of ice cream, maybe that will open up, and a month later, you will come back and say, you know what? I would like to talk to you. I do believe in Allah, God, whatever they believe in. So this is also rapport building. You get to know them and they get to know you in a good way. So after having invited them, let them pick a claim. What do they want to talk about? And as you know, that could be anything. There's also another option that we're currently working on, or I'm working on this and have talked a bit with some of them. And that is to make a kind of bargain with them, say, okay, now I have poker chips here. I have a red poker chip and I have a green poker chip. What would you say if we take the green poker chip randomly out of a bag? We will talk about a claim you pick. If you pick the red poker chip, we will talk about a claim of my choosing. Or we could add more green poker chips or more red poker chips for your liking. So you have the odds you would like. Now, this will intrigue people. And some people would actually choose it just because of that. I have tried this now 3 times online with people, and we just use a random generator online. And all 3 times people said, oh, they like that idea, and they would like to give me the better odds of choosing the topic. So that could be an option for you guys. I don't know how this works in real life. We haven't done this yet, or not to my knowledge, it hasn't been done in real life yet. But if you really want to talk about religion, that could be an option. The next things we want to do is we want to define the terms and avoid ambiguity. I have a hard time saying that word. So what we mean is we want them to define their terms. So when someone says faith, you don't just blur out Aaron Ra's definition of faith that you've heard multiple times. You don't blur out a line from the Bible that says what faith is. You ask them, okay, what is your definition of faith? And that's what you're talking about, because their claim is about their version of faith. So it doesn't help that you're trying to use your own definition. It's their definition. And if they come and they say they believe that atheists are people who say that there is no God and everyone who has a God is an idiot, okay, you might disagree with them, but that's their belief and that's what you're going to talk about. So there's no point in telling them they're wrong. In this case, let their words be true. Now, when they have given you the claim and you think you have understood it, this is a good time to repeat it back to them. And a way to do this is to say, okay, so what I am hearing is that you believe. Don't say you believe, say what I'm hearing is you believe. Because if you say something wrong, you're not accusing them in their eyes, because you're just telling what you're hearing. Another thing is try to avoid putting words in their mouths. So if they say, well, I believe that God created the heaven and the earth and all that is on it in 7 days, don't tell them, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you say God magicked everything into existence in 7 days. they never use the word magic. So don't put that word in their mouth. That might not be their definition of what's going on. To them, the creation and magic is two separate things, or could be. Maybe it's the same, you don't know, so don't put that word into their mouth. And keep repeating this and get definitions until you actually agree. Don't move on from this step if you're not sure what they are saying. Now is a good idea to get a confidence score. Now, you don't have to do this at all. But the benefit of getting a confidence score is that you can actually see, maybe not this time, maybe later, if they have moved for one reason or another. And this could be, so on a scale from 1 to 7, on the Dawkins score, on a percent of 1 to 100, or whatever you would like. Using an off scale, something that's not common, can have the benefit of making them think. You say, how many percentage? People have a tendency to say, oh, 100%, just because, oh, I'm all sure. But if you say, okay, on a scale from 1 to 23, people have to think. And they might say, okay, 21 instead. Simply just because you used another scale. When you have gotten the confidence, then you need to know, okay, why are they so confident in this claim? So you ask for, what are their main reasons to hold this belief? What are the evidence they have for their claim? And how did they come to this confidence? There are many ways to phrase it. And depending on what the claim is, you might want to use one way or another. And then you have to examine, okay, so what is the authority behind those reasons and behind the claim? What would they accept? So for instance, if someone is an anti-vaxxer, could be one option. Okay, so what kind of authorities are you listening to? Well, I'm only listening to private doctors who have no interest in medical companies. Okay, then you know it won't help you in any way to cite any big pharma. Well, I'm only trusting in doctors who has never been publicly hired. Okay, no reason to cite Dr. Fauci, I think his name is pronounced, because that won't help you. And you know where you are. And maybe they will say, I only trust people who have meditated in a cave for 10 years over this problem. Okay, fair enough, that's their authorities. Then those are the authorities you are going to question. Why is this a good authority? What is it that makes him a good authority to you? Why is he trustworthy? Then you have to figure out what could shift their confidence in this authority or in the claim. So if we're going to the one where they say anyone who has meditated for 10 years in a cave, okay. So you can ask them, what would make your confidence go up that this person is truly trustworthy? And it's a good idea to ask for up first, because people expect to be asked for down in confidence. And this has to make them think, how could I be even more sure of my position? And if they have said, oh, if I found out that he has said 15 years in that cave and meditated, okay, awesome, that makes your confidence go from 90 to 95. But what if you found out that he has only sat in the cave for 2 years? Would your confidence go down? Now, if they are honest, if 15 years would make it go up, then 2 years should make it go down. So that's one way to ask the questions. You would, of course, start with going down first and then go the other way as well. Often, this is not about changing their confidence down. It's about shaking their confidence up or down, because both things means they have given it thought. You also find people where you are so sure after the conversation that, yeah, he went down. And when you ask them, oh, they're same level or they are higher. You can ask them anyways, and you might be right that it's lower, because it could be a feeling of grasping on. And then, of course, you can repeat the 3 last steps as many times as you need to understand the claim, but make sure to always maintain the rapport. make sure to keep the conversation easy and light, and try to be as understanding as you can, even no matter how much you disagree. As many other street epistemologists have said, if you can end the conversation and they have no idea what your position is at that point, that's great. You don't want them to think that you have the same position as them if you don't. But you don't want them to think that you are opposed to them either. You can tell them afterwards, or you can tell them first, but you don't want them to get the impression from the interview itself. The interview, you should be as neutral as you could be. And after this, always thank your interlocutor for their time. They have taken time to help you understand it, not the other way around. This is also building and maintaining rapport for later interviews, both with them, but also people who have seen you do this, people who maybe see if you put this on YouTube. It will show people that you are a nice, civilized person to talk to. So what I'm thinking is that we should try this if we have someone who is willing to. But before we do this, are there any questions to anything we have had as of yet?
I have a question in terms of, oh, Michael, go ahead. You raised your hand first.
Oh, I've been to a few of these meetings. One question I always ask, and I still haven't really gotten an answer to it, is like, I mean, obviously you're talking about metacognition, but what is the theoretical underpinnings for what you're doing? Like, are you going off of any certain school of thought, any sort of theoretical school?
Well, the only thing I can say is where I have it from, to be honest. And I have it, of course, from Street Epistemology by Anthony Magnabosco, and from what I've learned about the Socratic method. And to me, the evidence that this work is all, what is that you call the English word for this? Anecdotal and personal, the evidence that I have. I'm not aware that there have been any big surveys or studies on the effect of this. But I will be glad to look it up and actually send the answer to Judy. And also, I know this will come on YouTube later. I will also post the answer in the comments if I can find any deeper answer. If not, I will tell you.
Okay. And also, I was wondering too, like, how would you differentiate what you're doing between this and proselytizing?
Because in this, you are not supposed to, and I'm saying supposed to because some people, of course, do it, to give your own opinion and your own stance. You're not supposed to give any counter to what they are saying. You're not supposed to give evidence unless asked for. Where if you are I can't pronounce it, sorry. But if you're doing the other thing, you are coming with the claims, you are coming to convince the person of your position. In this case, you are coming to see if the person is justified in his position. And as I know you've heard many people say, you can have people go up or down in their confidence score on these claims. If you get to our Discord server later, you will meet a person in there who is a really Christian person, and he is really good at street epistemology. And I know for a fact that he has only been confirmed in his belief by street epistemology. So it can go either way.
Okay. Have you ever looked at any social science methods for doing field work? Just wondering.
Not much. My main approach from the science is that I'm currently taking a bachelor in computer science and artificial intelligence. So the only thing I have there is a bit of theory of mind. And that's basically it, some ethics and some morals, but not much. All the rest is amateur level and just personal interest.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because, I mean, I'm just kind of like wondering, how do you keep cultural relativity? Because it seems like you're coming into it where you have an idea that you're wanting to have the other person come to, or am I completely mistaken with that?
Some people do come into it with that approach, but I personally like to take any kind of claim, which means I don't even know what their claim is when I come in. I know I said I'm an atheist, but I'm actually just as interested in any other topic. Or well, not any other topic, but most other topics. And I have so far had, I think I'm about 50 conversations so far. And I think 20 of them, I had no idea of my own position when the conversation started. And I had to go out afterwards and actually learn myself to get a hold of this position.
Thanks.
So I think it's a great way to learn as well.
Hey, thanks.
Gary?
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I
Oh.
suspect that you may not have been prompted or previewed to know that Mr. Young is a part of our group and he's online today. He's, in my opinion, very effectively advocated these kinds of propositions to us before in other conversations and other topics. So I'm respectfully nominating that Mr. Young may well be a great candidate to work with you as a tryout example. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Gary. Oops, sorry, I unmuted you accidentally. Jim Peterson, you have your hand up. It's hard to see your hand because it's so light on the white wall. You're muted, Jim.
I would like to second Gary's recommendation. And however, I think that what my general impression of street epistemology and your version of it is that it is by way of a charitable service, an interest in the welfare of other people. It is therefore a humanistic exercise designed to be of help to someone else who may need it. And the voluntary nature of what you've described seems to bear that out. Would you agree?
I'll agree that is the goal of street epistemology, as far as I understand it, to get there. I will also say that I won't say that I'm sure of, but I'm pretty sure that people who accuse street epistemology of having the goal to create atheists do have a good reason to have that claim, because I think it did start out as that. And that's a baggage that it will carry for a long time. But I know the goal is to get to the more broader humanistic and societal helpful parts. So yes, I agree in your statement.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Young, are you willing to be the volunteer?
I'm willing to participate.
Figured
I'd
you
like to
would
make a
be.
comment before I start. I haven't done street epistemology on the street because I live in Costa Rica and I am not as fluent in Spanish as I need to be able to just talk to people on the street. But what I have been doing is carrying on conversations with people on YouTube. And I have essentially studied the street epistemology methods used by Anthony Magnabosco and others. So I've watched probably 50 at least of these videos and taken notes myself. A couple of things that I wanted to say here is that what I've observed from them has informed my behavior with the way that I interact with people. So there are certain things that I know that would torpedo a conversation, will destroy the conversation. I have to be very careful. And I want to underscore a couple of things that you pointed out in that. And one of them is I never contradict anything that the person says. I just don't. I used to do that, but it would create a atmosphere, turn the conversation into a debate. And I don't like debates and they don't produce anything. So I never contradict. I let them say whatever they want to say, and I never say they're wrong about anything. And the other thing that's extremely important is I never say anything offensive to them. I never called them stupid or an idiot or anything of the like. Now, I do one thing differently. I don't confine myself to asking questions. I do express an opinion, but for the most part, I try to focus as much as I can on asking rather than telling. So yeah, I'll participate in whatever way you would like me to participate.
Oh, thank you for that. Judy?
I was just going to ask, one of the questions that I had, you talked about you hadn't done this in person. God, I can't remember which item it was you were talking about, that you've only practiced online. Sorry, my brain is gone. But I was wondering if you could maybe talk to us a little bit about how you do this online. Is it chats?
What I
Jim, let me get my question out, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking this question to me.
No, I was asking to Miklas, how do you do this online? You don't have to do this right now because we can go through the example, but if you could give us some hints on the best way to, how you've been doing it online, chats, Discord, whatever method you're using.
Me personally, I've used Discord for the most part. One time I've used Zoom and other things where I can see people. I like to have the eye contact and be able to see people's reactions. But I also see benefits in using Young's method of using, for instance, text on YouTube. I think that's what he has done. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Because using text gives you more time to think. And this means you can phrase your answers and your questions way, way more eloquently than you can when you are in a live conversation. And I know there's a lot of people actually starting to use street epistemology in text and sees benefits to doing that. So I won't say one method is better than the other, but personally, I prefer live conversations.
I think the challenge would be building rapport when you're just doing comments on YouTube. That would seem very difficult to me, but I don't want to interrupt you anymore. Please go ahead with your presentation and your demo. Okay,
fair enough. And Young, by the way, I would say I agree with basically every single point you made there. So, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing this text parts because it's creating a new way to do this, and people can go in and read these comments long times after, and will be able to learn from you as well. So that's great to see. And I hope that you find that beneficial as well. You told me that you had developed a bit over the time, that you changed your method and the way that you're interacting with people. Does this apply to your everyday life as well?
It does. It absolutely does. I have a granddaughter who visits, and I have been talking with her during the visits, and I've been able to actually get her to talk to me, whereas it's very difficult to talk to people about religion because they want to shut down. They want to go on the defensive. They want to feel, it seems, as though they're under attack. And so being conscious of this, I've had to strategize my approach extremely carefully so that I don't remember fear that I ask. If that makes sense to you.
It does, absolutely. And I can recognize many of the things that you're saying there. I don't think it applies to everyone, but I can recognize that I have seen that multiple times. And this would actually be a establishing rapport part. We are talking about something that I heard about him, something he said, and we're keeping it friendly. Now, next thing would be that I would invite him to making this interview and explain it to him, but we've just went through the explanation, so no reason to do that. And I'm guessing I have your consent to challenge whatever claim you are making later.
You do.
Thank you. So, Young, do you have a claim that we could examine here? Preferably one that we could examine in a short period of time so we can have more people doing this.
Yes, I will suggest a claim. I'll suggest the claim that science, the scientific method, is the best method for making a distinction between things that are imaginary and things that are object reality.
Okay, interesting. So your claim, as I hear it, is that the scientific method is the best way to distinguish between imaginary and reality. So could you explain to me, when you're saying the imaginary, what do you mean by this?
Well, the problem for me is that I hear so many claims that are untestable. And people expect me to embrace these claims without testing them, to embrace them on faith, blind faith, without testing, even though that if the claim was false, there would be no way for me to demonstrate or discover that it is false. The scientific method includes the requirement that a claim be falsifiable. And so for this, this for me helps me distinguish whether or not I want to reject a claim, be skeptical of a claim, or whether or not I'm willing to give the claim at least a fair hearing.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, what you're telling me is that because the scientific method has built-in tests of whatever claim they are supposed to challenge, this allows you to, should we say, evaluate the, well, actually the value of whatever claim is being made, if this is worth your time to look at, or if this is just something people have maybe thought of or made up by themselves or heard in the same way. Is that correct?
It is correct, because if it's untestable, I don't want to embrace anything that's untestable. I do realize that there's a difference between facts and sound judgments, and sound judgments require us to look at a broad amount of data and evaluate all of the data available to us and try to make a sound judgment on the veracity of a particular conclusion. So not everything is cut and dried, if I may use that expression. Mm-hmm. But when I know that something is untestable, completely untestable, it can't be demonstrated to be false. If it's false, I know that I should be extremely wary of it.
Interesting. Do you know of any examples of something that you think very likely could be true, but that's just isn't testable in any way?
Yes, I think that string theory may have credibility, yet scientists are not settled on a way that they might be able to test that it's actually a hypothesis. And membrane theory is a scientific hypothesis, which supposedly accounts for the possibility of creating the Big Bang, or the expansion that created the universe. So there is actually quite a few today in science that scientists have hypothesized, but they readily admit that they can't give them status as well substantiated theories because they have no way to test them.
Okay. So
I'm withholding belief myself, just as the scientific community is doing so.
That makes sense to me. So if I can summarize, so you're saying that you personally will withhold your belief on any claim or position that you don't find testable and falsifiable, but you may have a, should we say, tendency to watch and agree more with claims that are studied deeply, but you won't take a final position on them.
Yes. So if you referred to the scale of confidence, if it's falsifiable and has been well tested, the confidence would be extremely high. If the claim may sound really good, but can't be tested, the confidence level might be quite low, even though I might not totally rule it out.
That's really interesting. So everything you say here is bound up on the scientific method. And what I'm interested to learning about your confidence score is, what is your confidence in the scientific method? Let's say on a scale from 1 to 100 in this case.
My confidence in the scientific method is at least 99%. And I'll give you the reason why. Because it has proven its value over time. There have been occasions where the scientific community has been duped. But the one thing that always redeems the scientific community is the fact that if a claim is being tested, it must always yield the same result repeatedly, no matter where the tests are performed or by whom the tests are performed. So that is a checks and balance, if you will, that gives the scientific method its credibility.
Interesting. So these checks and balances, here you're talking about exactly the falsification, where in the scientific method, people are actually actively trying to falsify even their own claims at times and allow others to do the same.
Well, they are, if they're applying the academic standards, they would try to falsify their own claims, but they can be certain that their peers are definitely attempting to falsify their claims, because there's a Nobel Prize for somebody who can falsify a scientific theory.
That is absolutely true, and very interesting. But what I wonder is, what could actually, now you said 99%, so it would be extremely hard for you to get higher on this scale. But the scientific method has been around for a very short period of time compared to so many other methods to find truth of things. Are there something that could make you doubt the scientific method?
No, actually, at this moment in time, as much as I would like to find something to make me doubt the scientific method, I'm unable to find that. I'm open to that, but I can't find anything that would make me doubt the scientific method. I think that the scientific method also has to work with critical thinking concepts, and those concepts work hand in hand, giving scientists the credibility that they have.
Okay, very interesting. Now, a quick pause here to explain something. Now, usually we'll always try to get them to come with ways that they can raise or lower their confidence. But if they don't have any, one option is to ask them to set up a hypothetical, if they can. But I'll skip that part because I think you have already tried that many times, Young, in this case. You sound like it to me, at least. So I'm making an assumption here. Don't do that. I'm doing it now. So I'll instead give him a hypothetical. So you can't find a way. What if tomorrow there came out a scientific paper that had been peer reviewed by every known scholar within psychology that you know of? And what this paper found was that scientists has an extreme confirmation bias towards other scientists of their own field. Would that move your confidence up or down in the application of the scientific method?
I think that it probably would be, might erode my confidence slightly, but the fact would remain that there would be a strong motive for the other members of the scientific community to find fault with their findings, and that would expose the problem with the theory, if you will. And so then the theory might be come under scrutiny, more scrutiny, and be called into question. But as far as the actual process of the scientific method and the way that it's applied in the scientific community, I think it might actually strengthen my confidence because of the fact that that occurred.
That's great to hear. Now, we could repeat this over and over again. This is just a sample. And we actually just had a great thing here. He admitted both some things that could actually lower part of his confidence. And he also said something that some part that would be raised. And this is actually all we want in a street epistemology conversation. We can, and in many cases should, stop it right here, so we don't risk removing those thoughts that he has right now. So for this reason, Young, thank you for the conversation. I found it interesting, and I will disclose that I actually agree with you. So that's also good. Do you have any questions for me? Anything you would like to know?
At this moment in time, no. I'll give you the time back just to continue with this.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I can see there's a lot of things in the chat. I'll just take a few seconds to read that.
Thanks, Jim Young, for that. Jim Peterson has volunteered, but I'd like to find out if anyone else is interested in doing this, since he's a co-host. And we want to get other people to participate if we can. Speak up.
Here. Well, before we continue, while people think, then we'll give people a bit of a chance to think. There's a few tools that I would like to talk about,
Okay.
but I wanted to have the first example first, so people had something to look at. And also outside of the conversation, thank you, Young. That was a nice conversation. And I would like your feedback on it later, if you have the time. So a few things, repeat back the statements for clarification. You can do that throughout the conversation, but don't do it too much. because you will risk sounding like a parrot. You will risk sounding like you're not really interested. You're just trying to get to a point. So when you repeat things back, make sure to use your own words, but don't put words in their mouth. And make sure you're doing it for actual clarification and not just to do it. Ask what could raise their confidence first. We talked about that earlier. That has the benefit that it can throw them out of the loop of a specific position. If they don't know how to explain, for instance, I asked you to explain, what was it? It wasn't the scientific method, it was imaginary. I asked you to explain imaginary. If you ask people to explain something they can't explain, try to ask them to explain the antonym of something. So in this case, it would be, Jan, can you explain what is an antonym? What is the opposite of imaginary? This might...
object reality.
Objectively reality, okay. And then you could ask them to define that deeper and then go back and ask, okay, so in contrast to imaginary, what is imaginary then? Or in contrast to this, what is imaginary then? This might help explain terms better, and it will show interest. You can also use what's called an outsider test. I didn't find a good use for it in this conversation, but we could have set down, okay, so let's say that I say that the Bible is the only correct way to find answers to everything in life, and you say the scientific method is the only way. You say that we should see if we can falsify it. I say we should see if it correlates with what's in the Bible. If a third person comes along and he knows nothing of the Bible or the scientific method, how should he decide which method to use? That's an outside test, and it's a great tool to get people to think, is my method actually good? Another option is that you can ask them, would you use this for other things? So in this case, Jan, would you use the scientific method to decide if it's true that your kids went to school when they said they did? Take a simple option. Again, if people only use this method for one single thing, something is a bit iffy there, right? I mean, of course, few things are only applicable to one thing, but most methods should be applicable in general. Then try to use how can we figure this out and as I understand it. I at least tried to do this, so I hope I was correct in doing this in the conversation. And this is to avoid the accusation that you usually see in debate. You said, no, I heard you say. There's a big difference, and you take a lot off of them. Then avoid using buts, but do use ifs. So one example could be, but the scientific method has been falsified. That would be a debate, that would be an argument with the person. That's not what we're out for. Instead ask, what if you found out tomorrow that the scientific method has been falsified? Now, I know in this case that's an odd thing to say, that the scientific method has been falsified, but try to use that instead. And then, of course, we would ask, are there any questions? And if not, are there someone who would like to try to ask questions of others? Someone who has some claims you would let us examine here?
Well, I have a question before you move on, and it's this. I still feel like, well, let me rephrase this. How do I do this without feeling like I have an agenda?
Well, of course, the easiest way would be to not have an agenda.
But it feels like I have an agenda when I'm talking, when I'm looking at this, especially if they're bringing up something religious and I'm an atheist. It feels like I have an agenda.
I would say one of I'm going to recommend some books later, and one is called The Scout Mindset. And I actually think it comes up with a lot of good points in how to avoid this. Okay. I can't explain all of them, but one of them is to be absolutely deeply honest with yourself. The fact is, you could be wrong. I mean, it could be Descartes' scenario where there is actually a demon able to manipulate every single of your senses. And the only thing you can be sure of is that someone is thinking that thought, and that someone is what you conclude to be you. But everything else could be wrong. And if you have to go back to that and just say, okay, this is my zero, then try to go back to that and then build up what can you confirm up until the point before you talk to the person. Try to put yourself in the theist shoes in your case. That's the best thing I can say for you to do. And of course, the book has many more advices.
Okay, thank you. Jim Young, you have a question, but could you please keep it quick because we have people.
Well, I'm just wanted to say, if Jim Peterson is a volunteer to be questioned and there are no other volunteers to question him, I would volunteer to question him because I could use the practice, to be honest with you.
So, Miklas, I don't know if that was in your plans to have someone else do the question.
That would be absolutely great if you would do it together because we have the list here in front of us. And as I said earlier, this is not one that you have to follow step by step. You have already said you have some things that are your own. So if we can get them up on the table, that would be awesome. More for people to see, more examples.
Okay, great. Jim Peterson, are you okay with that?
I am. I'm okay with anything. I'm very flexible.
Well, Jim, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Just a moment. Wait, Michael has a question. Sorry, Michael.
It's more sort of like a comment. What you're doing here is very similar to like what we do in anthropology, except the main difference is that we do actual field work. So we actually have, we do what's called participant observation, where we actually try to, and it sounds like a lot of kind of what you're trying to get at, where we try to get into the mindset of the people that we're studying so we could get the emic view of the culture by actually experiencing their culture firsthand. So I don't know, the whole thing with street epistemology is I'm just kind of wondering how you kind of get at this, getting away from the bias and all this without actually experiencing their culture. I mean, you're just kind of approaching people on the street, but you're not actually trying to get into their worldview except just through these questions. It's just a basic comment. Anyway.
Well, you're not the first person I've heard make this comment, not to me personally, but I've heard it in other conversations. So I think you're absolutely correct from what I've learned. I do know that there are some street epistemologists who will at times go in and try to put themselves into the shoes of whatever claimant they are usually talking to. I have heard street epistemologists many times being invited to take a month, 2 months, or 3 months in the church of one of the people you're talking to. If you just come to my church for 3 months, you will see. And I've also heard people actually taking someone up on those offers. So some people do go those steps, but not as much as you guys, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Michael and Miklas. Okay, sorry to interrupt you guys. Go ahead, Jim and Jim.
Okay, Jim Peterson, I'd like to interview you if I might have your consent.
Well, seeing as how we're out here in the park and my dog is tired and I'd like to sit down. So sure, I'd be willing to have a conversation with you, even though we're complete strangers to each other. But I appreciate your asking. I can tell you all things that are of interest to me.
Okay, pick a topic or a claim that you would like to talk about, and we'll see if we can explore that.
Well, I just got out of church yesterday, and I heard a really good sermon. Pastor told us that Jesus rose from the dead. Can you believe that? I mean, that's pretty amazing stuff and pretty convincing to me. After all, it's in the Bible, right?
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you've been told that Jesus rose from the dead, and this is something that you believe is in the Bible. Do you personally believe this?
Well, it actually is in the Bible. I've read it 1,000 times. So I definitely believe it. It sounds reasonable to me. I mean, people with the miracles of modern science, as well as the miracles of that time, why, and of course it's God. We're talking about God here. So God can do anything, as we know. So, yeah, of course I believe it, 100%.
Okay, so if I might query you concerning your confidence level in this belief that Jesus actually rose from the dead, would you, 0 being a low confidence level and 100 being absolute certainty, where would you place yourself as far as the confidence level that Jesus rose from the dead?
Absolutely 100%. I got right on it. Who could doubt it?
Okay, fair enough. Might I ask you why you hold this belief at this confidence level?
Well, because what it means is that he came back from the dead and all that, and that means I can too. It means I can live forever. And they told me all about the golden streets and the 72 virgins, or no, that was some other. Anyway, yeah, why would I ever doubt it?
Well, that might bring me to the next question is there anything that might cause you to doubt the certainty of this claim?
I can't think of a thing. I mean, because it's in the Bible and God said it was true, and that's what my parents brought me up to believe, and it's traditional.
Are you aware of any other examples of people who have been known to arise from the dead?
Well, I had a neighbor once who had a cousin who kind of was dead for a while, and then within half an hour or so, the doctors brought him out of it. So we know people can rise from the dead. That's not uncommon, I understand.
Okay. Well, this causes me to wonder what your definition of the word dead is. How dead does a person have to be dead?
Dead. Well, let's see. I don't know. I guess it's somebody who's not living anymore, somebody who doesn't move, they don't talk, they stop interacting with me. I don't know, something like that. They don't respond to anything. That's dead.
So actually, it in your opinion, it might not be all that difficult for someone to be considered dead if their heart stopped, for example, for a short period of time.
No, it could be commonplace.
It could be very commonplace that people are dead and come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
But might I now compare that with the claim that Jesus was dead? Was he dead for a short period of time, or just how long was he dead?
Well, it says right there in the book that he was dead for 3 days. And actually he went off to hell or something. I don't know. And spent even more time there than the time that he lapsed
Oh, okay.
A weird story. He was dead.
Is there any way that we could confirm the truth of this story? Or is there any, or I might even include, is there any way that, just suppose for a moment, this is theoretical, if the claim were false, is there any way that you would be able to discover that the claim is false if it is in fact false?
Well, first off, I have to tell you that I've seen the movie Passion of the Christ, and if anybody can survive that and still come out alive in 3 days, why, they got to be something. Got to be something there, some sort of God. I don't know, but in terms of anything that would undermine my belief, that it just seems altogether definitive to me. I don't know. My grandfather believed it, and my whole community is very certain that that's true. I can't imagine that it would be anything other than what's in the good book. They don't call it the good book for nothing now, do they?
Let's imagine, since we're in the imagining stage, that you were born in a different country and a different culture, perhaps in a Muslim nation, and all of your family and friends and teachers were all Muslim. Would that have an impact upon your religious beliefs?
Well, if I was born a Muslim, it probably would. I'd be completely different. But as we all know, those people are all going to hell.
And
right there in the book.
How confident are you in the claim that they are all going to hell?
I'm just as confident of that as I am of anything else. 100% are all the way.
Okay. So there's one thing that would help me a lot, Jim, and I hope that you can help me here. I'm wondering, you seem to be embracing these beliefs on faith. What is faith to you?
Faith. Well, golly, I don't know. Let's see. I'm confident in the absolute truth of everything that's in the good book, and because I will get rewarded for it later.
Okay. What if? Well, I'll ask you this question. Should I embrace faith as a path to truth when I know that people of other religions like Islam are able to use the same faith that I use to be 100% certain of their beliefs? Would that be yeah, we could call it, let's end the conversation now for evaluation here.
Right
so,
now?
Yeah, I think now, first of all, you got a hard task because you got a straw man. And that's always hard to fight against, at least in street epistemology, because the person doesn't have to be honest at any point and probably won't be the 100% confidence here and the answers. Second of all, I did like your questions about death, about if people are dying and coming back to life. You explored that well, but you did went down a bit of a rabbit hole from there. You got more claims and claim upon claim. You could actually even earlier stop it a bit there, because he said he believed it because that meant he could rise from the dead as well, and he could get to the golden city and all that. Here he is making the claim that he believes it because he gets something good at the end. So this is actually a claim that it's true because he wants it to be true. And you could question that instead. So you could come instead saying, so Jim, what I'm hearing is that this is true to you because you would like the outcome of this to get into heaven. Is that a reliable way to get to something? Could you think of cases where this would not work? So, for instance, I believe it's true that I will win the lottery tomorrow because I would really like that new car. Will I win the lottery tomorrow because of that? So now that was an extreme case, but we have a straw man here, so it's a bit hard to work with. Another thing, if you're practicing this, try to watch straw man when you're practicing. Try to take positions you actually hold. If you don't like to talk about a religion because you don't hold that, then just try to take some simple things like, what is your favorite ice cream? Believe me, this is a simple question, but you can actually get some real thinking going just based on that. Why is that your favorite ice cream? Or why is it the best ice cream in the world? But do avoid the strawmans, both for the one practicing doing SE, but also for yourself. You will get much more out of taking real questions. Do you believe the earth is round? Why do you believe that? Try to take that one. Some of you will maybe run into what's called the unread library effect, that you believe the earth is round because you've been told so and you've seen pictures from outer space, but of course it could be doctored or something. So what are your own confidence? How do you know this is true? Have you actually done any measurements? Have you done any experiments? Or do you take it on authority? And why do you believe them? So there are a lot of claims that you people, I'm sure you hold, that you could question that doesn't have to be religious. And it will still be great practice. From that, I thought it was a nice conversations. You were holding nice tones, both of you, is a good report, but yeah, you already knew each other. All in all, nice conversations. I could hear that you have been practicing in text because some of the things you said sounded text-like to me. The way you did them seemed like you were going through the motions that you already knew from other conversations you have had online. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I actually have a lot of notes. I make a lot of notes. And every conversation that I have online, I record and put into a separate Word document for review at a later time to see where the conversation failed and why it failed, and how I can try to do a better job the next time. I probably have maybe 15 of these conversations. It's interesting that a lot of people, it is totally different when you're doing it online by posting messages. A lot of people are on the defensive and they will not answer a question. You can ask a straight up question, they will completely ignore it. I've been communicating over the last week or so with an individual who has never answered a single question I've asked. Every response to me was to quote Bible scripture, make claims, religious claims. Never a single time did he ever answer a question. And I did not call him out on it, because I've learned that if you start calling somebody out, that's what they want to do. That's what they want you to do. They want you to give them an excuse to run.
Thank you, Jim. Can we maybe, Michael has a question. I just want to make sure, because we're coming up to the end of the time, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask whatever they want.
Oh, actually, I don't have a question, but I just noticed that the chat is disabled.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that. I don't know why. It's just not working. I've tried a couple things and nothing has fixed it for me. So I don't know. I apologize to people if you were using chat. I've never experienced this problem before. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Never seen that either. Well, we can go to the Q&A, but to make sure that, I'll just see if I can post this in the chat then, because I did have these links to you guys that I would like you to have. And among those are one thing that I think is very important. There's the Discord channel. And the Discord channel will allow you to actually try to practice this with both religious and a-religious people. There is people who believe in both God, Allah. I think we have a few Hindus in there. We have people who believe the earth is flat, people who believe it's round. We have people of all sorts who are actually open to these things. We even have a person in there who participates in the street epistemology, and his main claim that I've heard from him is that street epistemology is a waste of time and doesn't work. But he will gladly take that claim up. So now we'll see here. Can you guys see this in the chat?
Yes, I see it in the chat. So
awesome.
We got it. I can also mail it to people too.
So before we go to the Q&A, then I will say these are the 6 books that I personally like the most of the, should we say, the basic stock of books within street epistemology. And this is also the order I would actually recommend people read them in. And the reason is to open yourself up. And this is for atheists, actually, this order. If I had to talk to someone of religiosity, I would have put another order. The reason for this is that the Scout mindset is designed to open yourself up to being wrong. And it does this really well, I think. The second one, The Righteous Mind by Ernest and Hyde, will for many people, especially if you're also on the left at the same time, allow you to see maybe why people on the opposite side, religious or politically, think and do as they do, at least to some degree, and be more charitable towards them when you're talking. And that's helping a lot when you're doing SE, to be charitable. And then, of course, How to Have Impossible Conversations. I think this book is superior to the first one. So that's why it's there. Then You Are Not So Smart. It's a great book to listen to because there's a lot of assumptions that we do in our everyday life that this one will show us is wrong. And this, again, makes you more charitable towards others that you may disagree with. And then the last one is an audiobook or a Kindle. I don't think you can get it in print. And it's 49 hours of rationality, and it's a good book. I recommend it. And then lastly, and that's mostly for the history of street epistemology, A Manual for Creating Atheists. But I would take that one as the last one, because it kind of counters the things from the Scout mindset, The Righteous Mind, and You're Not So Smart a bit. So I would take it in that order. Aside from that, should we take a short Q&A? How long time do we have left?
Well, we have as long as people want to stay. We normally end at 6:30, which we and right now, but we can stay as long as we want. But I don't want to keep you up too late because you probably have things to do tomorrow. Not to mention kids getting up very early.
My wife has promised to take them tomorrow, and I'm very grateful.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes, just one last little question. In our culture, we run across many people who are deeply suspicious of any kind of interaction with other people. They are distrustful of motivations, and with good reason, because people are often exploited for commercial reasons through commercials and other sorts of things, or trying to be talked into what are basically frauds and scams. So at any rate, how do you deal with people who start a conversation well, but then become suspicious about the kinds of questions that are being asked? How do you, Miklas, handle this problem when it arises, if it does arise in your experience?
I have only experienced it once myself, so I won't use that example. That's too small a sample size. Instead, I'll say what I've been told by others. Explain to them the method. Simply explain to them what you're going to do. Even if you, for instance, are practicing and you are just having, let's say you have a screenshot of this list here, and I will send it to Judy so she can give it to you. You'll get the entire presentation. Just give that to them. Say to them, okay, this is what I'm going to do. this is how I'm going to ask the questions. And you can have the sheet, you can see that I'm not doing anything outside of that. This way they will know what's going on. It will work for some people, it won't work for others. I think it is, I also think that's Anthony. He has a few videos of people coming over and telling him that they have been told that street epistemology is to manipulate them. I'll see if I can find those videos, and I'll also send those to Judy so she can give you the links at some point. They are worth watching. There's also the 3 newest videos, I think, on his channel is a husband who is trying to use street epistemology on his wife. Because I can't remember what he studies, but he is not a creationist at least, but she is homeschooling their kids and she is using creationist materials. So he decided to use street epistemology, and some of these topics actually come up. And Anthony and him is talking back and forth about that. It's 3 videos of 10 minutes each, roughly. Well worth the time, well worth the time.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a question or some comment they would like to make, or anything
I can see Ellen has a hand up.
Eileen,
I can't.
Eileen,
Eileen, sorry.
I remember when I lived in the UK for a bit, but the Danish people that I had met, they always considered Americans kind of childish, the way that we sort of, I'm just getting a kick out of this, because really, the way that whenever you have a discussion with these religious fanatics, the blood of Christ is going to protect me. I mean, I don't want to, this is the problem I've got, is when they are having this belief and they have a death in the family, like what I'm just dealing with now. I don't know how to come across to them to give them any comfort, because what they believe in is going to give them comfort of that afterlife. So I tend not to even deal with my people that I know anyway. I think the next generation might get better, but the ones that I'm dealing with here, they don't want to change their beliefs, and I don't blame them. It's their comfort. I'm sorry, that's all I had to say. You didn't have that much in Denmark, I don't think, as far as these churches.
No, we do have some of them, but it's far less. I agree on that. But I can say the best thing I could recommend is just to be there for them, be a friend.
Oh, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. But I am thinking of using my sister, who is particularly religious, and what we used to do as Catholics is send a mass card or do a novena. So I'm going to flip it over to my sister so she can do the comfort part of that. I don't know if that is sort of against this whole epistemology thing, but to me, whatever helps, it's more humanist.
I don't think there's anything against it in this, because you can accept everyone and accept their ways of doing it. And if you can't approach it, it might be better just to let your sister do it in this case. So fully understandable.
Yeah.
I can't get my screen to adjust. So if you're raising your hand manually, I cannot see you. If you would make sure you do the electronic raising. And Sarah, I'm gonna let you have a question. I know Michael's next, but Sarah hasn't asked a question yet. So she gets to go next.
I have a question. I was just wanting to know, how has your experience been with this so far? Can you kind of elaborate on how this has been for you personally, how you felt while you're doing the street epistemology, and can you just kind of explain the overall effect it's had on people?
Yes, well, as I said, I came from a background where some of the things I've done is debate and some of it is activism. And now the conversation is over, so now you can all hate me, and I can tell you that some of the activism is in Denmark, we are a large portion who is against circumcision for non-medical reasons. And I'm an activist within this. What I've seen is that this activism gets heated extremely fast. The smallest, lightest provocation from one side or the other can ruin the conversation fully. I have now had 3 different people SE conversations about this, and they have all been friendly, and they have all asked me questions afterwards. why is my position as it is? How can it be that I think that this is wrong? And I have been able to tell them and been able to give them exactly the same information that I would have it been a debate or a public talk. And they have actually taken it and read it. And 2 of them have come back to me later and given their opinions on it. Now, we haven't come to an agreement, but I've actually got them to read the material. Where what I've seen beforehand is that, yeah, I don't want your material. What you're telling me is wrong. And I think this is a profound benefit to this method compared to debates or arguments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Michael, go ahead.
Maybe this is in your reading list, but I'm just wondering, have there been any actual academic studies of street epistemology? You know, for instance, have there been any like professional psychologists or sociologists that have looked at it, and have they had anything to say about this method?
And I think you asked this earlier, or someone did. And as I said, I'm not personally aware of any, but I will look this up. But I don't know. I will look this up and give the answer to Judy, so she can send it on to you. And it can be, I hope, Judy, I think that was the only question that's been so far, that you will put the answer in the, what's called the description maybe of the video.
Yes, I can do that. So anybody else have anything they want to ask, comment on? Oh, Jim Young, okay.
Just want to say that I've watched probably 50 of the street epistemology videos, and I can tell you that I not every case, but in some of these conversations, I've seen some extraordinary impact, and I'm not exaggerating. I have seen people brought to tears, and I have seen people, when the conversation was over, leave saying, I am shaken to the core and I need to go and ponder this. I will be thinking about this for the rest of the day and all day tomorrow. And I will, so to me, that is the evidence that it has an impact, a very positive impact.
And I fully agree with your statement here that it has a very positive impact. But I do have to break a bit of the illusion. These are, for the most part, selected videos. Now, there are some people who are doing this live where you can see every single thing they do. But many of the videos that comes out are selected. So you can find the live recordings where you will get any conversation. And you will find there is also conversations that just seems to run in a treadmill for some time. And I'm saying this just so you are prepared when you go out and do this. You will find people where you don't see the impact, but there's a chance that you will come again later and maybe later again, and the impact will come over time. It's not always that you see the impact right away, just to be honest with this thing here. But yes, there is great impact sometimes, and it's wonderful to see.
Thank you, Jim. Amy, I think we'll let you be the last question because we don't want to impose on our guests too much longer.
Oh, exciting. I was about to get on chat and saying, I've got to call 911. Bye. There was somebody out picking fruit off my tree. And then I realized it's a friend of mine. She just was helping herself to some limes, I guess. She had some margaritas to make. Anyway, I have met Anthony through Recovery from Religion. Are you familiar with that group?
I'm familiar, but I'm not part of.
Oh, it's worldwide. So it's a really cool group. And so he had sent out something, and it may have been a questionnaire with multiple choice things. And he said it was a work in process. Is that what you're referring to?
Nathan, abstract activist, should we call Brainchild?
I don't know if I still have it bookmarked, but anyway, I thought it was really interesting, and I brought it to a gathering where I got into a discussion with someone, and it was shocking to me how big a supporter she was of our Florida governor. And I said, oh, wait a minute, and grabbed my list. And I said, can I do this with you? It's something I just learned. I totally explained it to her. She looked at the list and said, yeah, let's give it a go. But there's always, you know, in a group setting, you've got other people interloping, right? And so a friend of mine's husband was like, "Oh, you're picking on her." And I said, "No, I'm not." And she even said, "No, she's not. If there's a question that I find offensive that she asks me, I'm going to tell her I'm not answering that. But everything that she's saying is really, it's making me think, you know." And I was totally honest with people, showed them the list, walked it around, you know, whoever came over to our table where we were chatting, because unfortunately my friend's husband is a bit loud. He showed it to them, and they actually, people got really interested in it. You don't have to be covert,
No, you don't.
I don't think, with a street epistemology. And that's what I like about it. I don't think it's manipulative. I really don't. And if people feel manipulated, they'll tell you.
I think you should definitely look up the last link in the chat of those I've given. That's the guy behind it, and you're right. It's awesome, and it works.
Yeah, it's another weapon in our armory. How's that?
Thank you, Amy. I know I said you would be the last question, but we have a new person who just raised his hand and then took it down. Holly and Jeff. I don't know if you're Holly or Jeff. So
I'm Jeff.
Okay, please go ahead.
No problem. I found Anthony's videos by happenstance on YouTube, and literally led me to find this group in Tampa or in Florida, because I've been an atheist for quite some time and really love engaging my family and friends with conversations that may seem difficult, but really I'm just wanting to understand them better. I don't think a relationship with somebody that I don't actually know is a very good relationship. So I push and try to dig at them. This to me seems like a very good match for my internal curiosity about other individuals' thoughts. And I think the key to this is indeed just to be very, very respectful and create rapport with the understanding that all I'm looking for, my only agenda is to get to know your position better, because I want to get to know as many truths as I can. And if your truth happens to be something that you can convince me of, I'm open to it. I think that's a very cool attitude to have that I think Anthony has spoken to, and you have as well. So I am religiously excited about this idea. So I don't know how I'm going to even, start, but literally I'm at the surface just trying to get as much information as I can to potentially use this as a tool in my neighborhood.
And Jeff, I will send you the information on the assistance that they need for going through their training book, because I went through the chapter and it helped me a lot, I have to say, to get a better grasp on this whole thing. Although it's just one particular chapter in the book that they're going over right now.
Gotcha. Well, thank you again for your sharing this information. And
you're welcome. All right, last chance, anybody? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Miklas. It's been quite provocative and interesting, and I hope we get some more people who are interested in practicing street epistemology to join the group.
If you are pleased with our programs, please tap the like button and then subscribe to our channel. Don't forget the bell so you don't miss any notices of new material. We usually post new content every week. See our created playlists to discover events thus far this year, or to see a list of topics and speakers from our rapidly growing and diverse collection since 1992.